So, for example, a parent who doesn't have a good sense of his or herself might try to live vicariously through their child. And then you get the sort of, with the crack of the whip, you've got to do better, you've got to get straight A's, you've got to be the best in sports, blah, 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 blah. And it has nothing to do with the kid. It has everything to do with the parent. Okay? So it's that kind of thing. So when we begin to understand some of these concepts and begin to apply them in our lives, we are leading our children in a way that is hard to quantify, but in a way that is more like Jesus, and in a way that's going to probably give all parents the best chance for having their kids grow up relatively mature later in life. All right, so how many of you have seen Hoosiers? Okay. All right, so if you haven't, you can rent it. It's obviously an old movie. What we're going to do now is we're going to watch the credits, the opening credits through the barbershop scene. Okay? Okay. It never gets old. For me, that never gets old.
I realize I've seen the movie.
You realize what?
I've never seen the movie.
Oh, you've never seen the movie?
No, I thought I had. I would have recognized. But I thought I had.
All right, so before we ask some questions about this, as I've already said, and I'm just going to say it in a different way, at its heart, leadership is not the result of position or written responsibility or official duties. It's not the result of charisma or consensus or skills. It's the consequence of being confident that you're worthy of love. You're confident in your own goals and dreams and values. It's knowing where you begin and end, especially emotionally. It is specifically not changing others, fixing others, convincing others, but focusing on your own growth as a human being. It's the wherewithal to take well-defined stands based on all of those things while remaining in relationship with the people around you to the best that you can. So if leadership is the consequence of these things or the result of these things, then what is leadership? Leadership is identifying what belongs to whom and returning it to them. And the belongings include emotions, actions, behaviors, responsibilities, duties, hopes, dreams, failures, sorrows, goals. We're not talking about property. We're talking about personhood, individuals. Ed Friedman, that name will be thrown around a lot, he's been dead for many years, was a rabbi. He used the phrase self-differentiation, to know who you are, to be defined in terms of yourself. It's emotional maturity. It's knowing your goals and values. So let's consider this from the theological point of view. Moses asked God what he wanted to be called or named. And remember the answer, Yahweh. I am who I am. God is the supreme I, who nevertheless chooses to remain connected and involved in creation. Do you understand this? So God knows who He is, okay? But He's not aloof. His identity is not like, I'm this and you're that, but I'm who I am with you. He's also Emmanuel. He's Yahweh and Emmanuel. God is with us. And so in theology, the nature of God answers the question of who are we? Who am I? In our own quest for identity and purpose, the place we look to is God, and specifically created in God's image. So self-differentiation is someone who knows, believes, and is committed to living into their own values, shaped by their own worship of and community with God in Jesus Christ. It's being an I while remaining connected and involved in the lives of those around us. So that's at the heart of Christian, I think that's at the heart of Christian discipleship. So, let's think back for a moment on what we just watched. What we need to think about and draw to our mind is in the scene of Coach Dale meeting Myra Fleener for the first time inside the school. What belongs to whom? What were the belongings that were sorted out? Because there was some sorting out that happened right then and there. What were they? What was sorted out?
Are you talking about the lady on the stairs?
Yes, that's Myra Fleener. Yes, that the opening. When I'm sorry. Coach Dale meets this woman who's obviously a teacher, and they have this conversation. So, what was happening there?
She wasn't secure about his ability to do the job. And she was investigating whether or not he could follow through, and he gave her nothing because it wasn't hers to take.
So what belonged to whom?
His confidence belonged to him, and her insecurity belonged to her. I think.
What else? Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I don't know, I had a hard time understanding what they were saying.
Oh, okay.
To me, everything was muffled. There was too much interference.
Okay. Did all of you have trouble hearing?
A little bit.
A little bit? Okay.
Her, not him.
So what about responsibilities? Who has what responsibilities?
Oh, it really wasn't her responsibility, except as she cared for the kids in the school, you know, that she wanted to know what was going on, but it wasn't her responsibility to find out if he was a good teacher or not. And she wasn't really concerned about him being a basketball coach. She wanted to know if he was a good teacher.
Right. She is concerned about the other two. We'll figure that out as time goes on. So who does have responsibility for discerning whether he's qualified?
The person who hired him.
The person who hired him, the principal. Exactly. So,
The guy you talked to, was that the principal?
yes, the guy who started sitting down in front of the air conditioner.
Yes.
Okay, he has a heart condition. That's just a clue of something's going on with him in terms of his health. But so Myra Fleener is a teacher. She owns if you will, her belongings. What belongs to her are her responsibilities as a teacher. He is now hired to be a teacher, and his job as a teacher belongs to him. Now, did you hear what he said to her after this opening exchange? The last thing he said, if everyone here is as nice as you, country hospitality is going to get a bad name. And she says, what a pleasant thing to say. Let's look at what would be the responsibility of someone with some kind of authority welcoming someone else for the first time. Think about that. What responsibilities, if you're not the principal, but you're a teacher, so you have some official capacity, and you meet someone for the first time, what would you say is the responsibility for greeting someone?
Nice to meet you or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, be welcoming. You're supposed to be welcoming them, not
Right.
interrogating them and throwing them out the door.
Right.
And that's what she was doing.
I think she was trying to make her place to let him know this is my school and I'm responsible for everybody and you're taking, I don't want you to take over for what I've been doing for years.
Well,
Could be, yeah.
She doubted that she thought he was supposed to be younger, and she doubted his abilities.
If you were Coach Dale, and someone, the first person you met, greeted you like that, how do you imagine your relationship with that person unfolding in the future?
It's gonna be rough.
It's going to be rough. If it were me, I can easily see myself trying to avoid that person in the future. And the reason I'm bringing that up is one of the keys to leadership is knowing who you are while you are in relationship with other people. So the challenge here is going to be in Coach Dale and how he relates to Myra Fleener as the movie goes on. Will he avoid her, or will he try to maintain some sort of relationship with her? So as the talking was going on, as that conversation was going on, I heard sort of an attack that might have been to put him on defensive.
There was a lot of that.
And as we continue listening to the movie, these are the things that we want to listen for. We want to listen for language that's kind of blaming, accusing, attacking, putting the other on defensive. Or we language, pressure to conform to the group. Where did we hear that language?
Oh, in the group of men.
In the group of men. Oh, we don't like change much here. So we thought we'd bring you in and show you how we do things. Woohoo!
They weren't giving them a chance.
Okay.
We only use.
So let's jump to that scene. The guy who sat in the chair at one point, his name is George. Okay? There's going to be another run in with him.
I think the not coach is trying to take ownership of coach. I don't know.
How did he put it?
I've already been running practice, so I'll just keep running until you get your feet wet.
Yeah. Whew. So, it's kind of narcissistic, where he has the sense of, I've been coaching, so that responsibility is mine. You are the coach, but that responsibility is mine too. Okay, that's where we get the narcissistic. Now, I'm using the word narcissist kind of loosely. I don't know if George is a narcissist or not. But when someone starts to suggest in one way or another, I have authority over you when I really don't, that's narcissistic. So these are the kinds of things that people who are not well defined will tend to say, or the way they will tend to act. People who play the victim are, you are responsible for what belongs to me. The enabler is, I'm responsible for what belongs to you. And then the narcissist, which we've already run into, and the leader, this is mine, that is yours, these are ours. Did you pick up on the fact that Coach Dale seems to have something in his past?
Yes.
One of the things I loved about the opening credits was that Crossroads.
Yes.
He comes to a crossroads, he gets out of his car. That's kind of a very typical way for a filmmaker to make a statement about something. He's at a crossroads. Okay, he's at a crossroads in his life. And the thing I want to point out here is that something significant went on in his past. We've gotten clues from his conversations with the principal. He says at the fence, if it doesn't work this time, that's it for good. If it were me, if I were thinking that way, I would probably want to do everything I could to make everyone around me happy.
People pleasing isn't necessarily going to get you where you need to be.
I know, but isn't that what we tend to do? I mean, if you're like, oh my God, if this doesn't work out, I'm out. I'm done for.
Well, so if he pleases the wannabe coach, he's not doing his job. So he's not going to please the principal. But if he does his job and coaches, he's not pleasing the wannabe coach or the other men in that role. The principal called him in to do something different. These people wanted to be saying, you can't please both parties.
Right.
Or the
But that doesn't stop us from trying.
or the woman teacher.
Or the woman teacher. Right.
And be true to yourself.
Right. And what I'm trying to do is sort of get you to think about how would you feel in these kind of situations, and sort of get in touch with your own sense of what would I do? Would I be tempted to please everyone?
I'd probably already be out on my ass because I'd have attacked the teacher. I'd have gotten defensive.
I thought it was a very clever way of saying, you know what, that was about the rudest greeting anyone's ever given me. Okay? Which I think was a way of being a leader. It's a way of saying, you know what, your belongings right now, your responsibility in this moment, right here and now, is to greet me and to welcome me. You don't know me. You don't know anything about me. And you're attacking me. All right? So he's basically telling her, you are not accepting your own responsibility. Okay? Just a clue of him saying, this is mine. And, basically, I'm a teacher. I've already been interviewed. I don't need to explain myself to you. So right from the very get-go, he was acting like, this is mine, that is yours, these are ours. We're already seeing that kind of leadership in him. All right. Now for our first fable. This is from a book that Ed Friedman wrote called Friedman's Fables. And they're meant to be a way of illustrating principles that he writes about in some of his other books. Ed Friedman was a family therapist, but he was also a rabbi in a synagogue. And he applied many of the principles of family therapy to leading a congregation. So for the sake of speed, I'm going to read this aloud. There was a man who had given much thought to what he wanted from life. He had experienced many moods and trials. He had experimented with different ways of living, and he had had his share of both success and failure. At last, he began to see clearly where he wanted to go. Diligently, he searched for the right opportunity. Sometimes he came close, only to be pushed away. Often he applied all of his strength and imagination, only to find the path hopelessly blocked. And then at last it came. But the opportunity would not wait. It would be made available only for a short time. If it were seen that he was not committed, the opportunity would not come again. Eager to arrive, he started on his journey. With each step, he wanted to move faster. With each thought about his goal, his heart beat quicker. With each vision of what lay ahead, he found renewed vigor. Strength that had left him since his early youth returned, and desires of all kinds of desires reawakened from their long dormant positions. Hurrying along, he came upon a bridge that crossed through the middle of town. It had been built high above a river in order to protect it from the floods of spring. He started across, then he noticed someone coming from the opposite direction. As they moved closer, it seemed as though the other were coming to greet him. He could clearly see, however, that he did not know this other person, who was dressed similarly except for something tied around his waist. When they were within hailing distance, he could see what the other had about his waist was a rope. It was wrapped around him many times, and probably, if extended, would reach a length of 30 feet. The other began to uncurl the rope, and just as they were coming close, the stranger said, "Pardon me, would you be so kind as to hold the end a moment?" Surprised by this politely phrased but curious request, he agreed without a thought, reached out and took it. "Thank you," said the other, who then added, "2 hands now, and remember, hold tight." Whereupon the other jumped off the bridge. Quickly, the free-falling body hurtled the distance of the rope's length, and from the bridge the man abruptly felt the pull. Instinctively, he held tight and was almost dragged over the side. He managed to brace himself against the edge, however, and after having caught his breath, looked down at the other dangling close to oblivion. "What are you trying to do?" he yelled. "Just hold tight," said the other. This is ridiculous, the man thought, and began trying to haul the other in. He could not get the leverage, however. It was as though the weight of the other person and the length of the rope had been carefully calculated in advance, so that together they created a counterweight just beyond his strength to bring the other back to safety. "Why did you do this?" the man called out. "Remember," said the other, "if you let go, I will be lost." "But I cannot pull you up," the man cried. "I am your responsibility," said the other. "Well, I did not ask for it," the man said. "If you let go, I am lost," repeated the other. He began to look around for help, but there was no one. How long would he have to wait? Why did this happen to befall him now, just as he was on the verge of true success? He examined the side, searching for a place to tie the rope, some protrusion perhaps, or maybe a hole in the boards, but the railing was unusually uniform in shape and there were no spaces between the boards. There was no way to get rid of this newfound burden, even temporarily. "What do you want?" he asked the other hanging below. "Just your help," the other answered. "How can I help? I cannot pull you in, and there is no place to tie the rope so that I can go and find someone to help me help you." "I know. Just hang on. That will be enough. Tie the rope around your waist. It will be easier." Fearing that his arms could not hold out much longer, he tied the rope around his waist. "Why did you do this?" he asked again. "Don't you see what you've done? What possible purpose could you have had in mind?" "Just remember," the other said, "my life is in your hands." What should he do? If I let go, all my life I will know that I let this other die. If I stay, I risk losing my momentum toward my own long sought-after salvation. Either way, this will haunt me forever. With ironic humor, he thought to die himself, instantly to jump off the bridge while still holding on. That would teach this fool. But he wanted to live, and to live life fully. What a choice I have to make. How shall I ever decide? As time went by, still no one came. The critical moment of decision was drawing near. To show the commitment to his own goals, he would have to continue on his journey now. It was already almost too late to arrive in time. But what a terrible choice to have to make. A new thought occurred to him. While he could not pull the other up solely by his own efforts, if the other would shorten the rope from his end by curling it around his waist again and again, together they could do it. Actually, the other could do it by himself, so long as he, standing on the bridge, kept it still and steady. "Now listen," he shouted down, "I think I know how to save you." And he explained his plan. But the other wasn't interested. "You mean you won't help? But I told you I cannot pull you up myself, and I don't think I can hang on much longer." "You must try," the other shouted back in tears. "If you fail, I die." The point of decision arrived. What should he do? My life or this other's? And then a new idea, a revelation, so new, in fact, it seemed heretical. So alien it was to his traditional way of thinking. "I want you to think carefully," he said, "because I mean what I'm about to say. I will not accept the position of choice for your life, only for my own. The position of choice for your life I hereby give back to you." "What do you mean?" the other asked, afraid. "I mean simply, it's up to you. You decide which way it ends. I will become the counterweight. You do the pulling and bring yourself up. I will even tug a little from here." He began unwinding the rope from around his waist and braced himself anew against the side. "You cannot mean what you say," the other shrieked. "You would not be so selfish. I am your responsibility. What could be so important that you would let someone die? Do not do this to me." He waited a moment. There was no change in the tension on the rope. "I accept your choice," he said, and at last freed his hands. Does that ring a bell with anyone? Anything about that story cause you to think of something in your own life? You don't necessarily have to share it. Something where you're responsible for someone else. You know what a classic example is? And this is really difficult and painful. The parent of an adult addicted to opioids. And in the addiction, the child will say anything, guilt their parent into anything to make the parent take responsibility for themselves. And in the end, all it does is enable the person. Both lives are now ended. And I can't tell you the number of people over the years, 32 years of ministry, where a parent or the wife or husband of an alcoholic will, in tears, just say they're so tired and fed up with taking responsibility for someone else. They're at the end of their own rope, but they can't let go. And I don't know what they expect me to say. Because if you can't let go, then you're making the decision to continue to do what you don't want to do. And it's a very, very difficult thing.
Tough love.
Yeah, it is tough love. I tried to guilt my parents once, not because I was addicted to anything, but just the typical teenager, you know. I used to threaten to run away from home. All because mom and dad weren't doing what I wanted them to do, right?
Yeah, I did that.
And you know what mom used to say? "I'll pack your bags." All right? And I think she meant it. That was the thing. I was pretty sure she meant it.
We used to tell them, make sure you have your toothbrush with you when you leave.
Right.
Here, I got you some clean underwear.
Right.
Well, I'm gonna call the police on you. You want me to dial the number for you?
Let's go back to the barbershop scene. Okay? There's something about this basketball team and the basketball team's relationship to the town. Or let's put it the other way. The men of the town have some sort of relationship with the concept of the team, not necessarily the individual players. It's as if the team is responsible for their own sense of worth for themselves. If the team is winning, I'm winning. Okay?
They were 15 and 10 last year.
Exactly. And we got them all back except one. Jimmy being the one, okay? And what don't you think that the men in the barbershop were like the guy who handed the rope to this guy and said, "Hold on tight, jump over"? The men of this town are saying to Coach Dale, "You are responsible not for the team, but for us." Okay, for us.
He didn't take the rope, though.
He surely did not. That's when saying nothing was the best thing to say. Absolutely nothing. I just love that scene. Gentlemen, it's been really nice talking with you. Good night. And all of them are like,
Well,
Well, it's like it was on the news this week. The coaches after a game, with kids' game, they all started a fist fight.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Oh, yeah, it's on the news. Coaches all started a fight. Coaches and fathers all started a fight.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah,
It was, they showed the fist fight on the news. Yeah.
right.
Like what kind of example are you setting for your children?
At first I thought it was just the fathers. And I thought that coaches should, the children whose fathers were fighting should take the kids off the team to show the fathers that this is not right. But then they said the coaches and the fathers were fighting.
So the team just needs to be disbanded and everybody suffers.
Yikes.
But that's an example of it.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Or how about, have you ever thought to yourself, why do I have a hard time saying no?
Oh, I used to. I can say,
You got easier as you got older? But I hear that a lot too. Why can't I say no? Well, what you're doing is accepting responsibility for stuff that isn't your responsibility. But somehow either it's because of something, it's more than likely something that's going on inside of us that causes us to say yes to things when really from the very get-go we didn't want to. We wanted to say no. But we didn't because I want to be liked, I don't want to ruffle those feathers, I don't want to rock the boat, whatever, okay? And to take us back to Coach Dale, if anyone is in a position emotionally to do exactly that, it's Coach Dale, because he's got everything to lose. Okay? Everything to lose. And yet still, he doesn't take the bait. He just doesn't do it. Did you notice what the pastor said? The pastor's going on Christian morals for our boys and blah, 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 blah. What did he ask Coach Dale what he believed in? It wasn't Jesus. You want zone or man-to-man defense? I thought that was just brilliant. Coming from the pastor. Okay? What do you believe in? Man-to-man or zone defense?
Depends on the team.
What's the religion? Basketball. Basketball. Okay? Or are you seeing is the concept sinking in here? So as we go along, we want to listen for these kinds of things. You want to, as you're listening to a clip, what are the belongings that are being sorted out? And who's doing the sorting? That kind of thing. What belongs to whom? And listen for this kind of language. You, we, I. And it doesn't always necessarily have to come out that way as you or we or I, but that kind of thing where there's blaming, accusing, and attacking, or there's pressure to conform, or there's accepting responsibility and claiming what belongs to me. And then these various types of victim, enabler, narcissist, and leader. Okay, any questions? All right. I'm going to turn this off here. Where's the switch mesh?